Hi, I'm Janina Ferreira. I'm Project Urgent Green Coffee Buyer as well as Sales Manager. And I'm the 2019 Brewers Cup Champion of Australia. Welcome to the first episode of a series of educational videos where we'll be exploring the different stages of the coffee journey. In these videos, we're going to break it down and explain where coffee comes from and how it moves through the production and supply cycle. Today, we are going to answer the question, what is coffee? The first reason this question is complicated is because the word coffee applies to every part of the production and supply cycle. When you visit a cafe, the word coffee means the drink you're going to have. Maybe a flat white, filter brew, or an espresso. Or maybe it's the roasted beans that are on offer for you to take home. If you're in a coffee roastery, now coffee means the roasted beans coming out of a roaster, or green beans sitting in coffee sacks. If you talk to a green bean buyer, coffee can be a bunch of small samples packed, waiting to be assessed, or a cupping bowl, where those samples have been roasted, ground, and brewed for the right amount of time to be cupped and scored. What about if you talk to an exporter in a producing country? Now coffee means beans that's still in parchment or in the dry cherry, waiting for milling and packaging. And if you ask a producer, coffee means cherries coming off a tree or cherries that have been pulped with beans undergoing fermentation. Coffee can be all these things, which is one reason why it can be complicated. Where do coffee beans come from? Coffee comes from a tree that produces a fruit similar to cherries. The seeds of that fruit are the coffee beans. Usually, a coffee cherry produces two beans, and they face each other, which is why one side of the coffee bean is usually flat. Sometimes a cherry will produce one seed or bean, and this is called a pea berry. Pea berries are usually round and quite small. Coffee trees can grow up to 5 meters or more if we left them to grow wild. But in a typical coffee farm, they would be pruned at about 2 meters high, so that pickers can easily collect the fruit when it's ripe. The other benefit of this pruning is that it increases the yield from the tree, because the tree can put its energy into creating and ripening cherries rather than just growing taller. When a sapling coffee tree is planted, it takes about 3 years to produce cherries, and coffee trees can live for as long as 40 years or even more. But as a coffee tree gets older, the amount of cherries it produces will drop, and sometimes quality can drop too. And where does coffee grow? Now, coffee trees love hot weather and tropical climates. You'll find most coffee growing regions in between the tropics, in what is often called the coffee belt. Coffee can grow outside of the coffee belt, so as long as it has the right conditions to survive. That's because the temperature is warm and humidity is usually high. But in addition to warmth and moisture, coffee trees like nutrient-rich soils and do very well at high altitudes. That's why they often grow in mountainous areas. Coffee trees at lower altitudes, let's say up to 1,200 meters, will typically produce a higher volume of cherries, but the flavor characteristics might be less complex or refined. That's because the fruit on the tree ripens faster, so it has less time to develop complex flavors. Coffee trees at higher altitude, from 1,200 up to 2,400 meters above sea level, will produce less cherries in general, but the flavors can be much more unique and expressive. That's because the cherries take longer to ripen. They are attached to the mother, the tree, for much longer time, and they can absorb more nutrients and evolve more than lower altitude coffee. The higher in altitude you go, the more noticeable these differences can be. Thank you for joining us for the part 1 of this coffee journey series. In part 2, we'll be talking about the differences between different types of coffee varieties. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Instagram so you can stay up to date.